Welcome back to the recap videos. This will be the third round of the Westchester County Championship. Going into the round with 2 out of 2. My rating is 1993 and I'm playing a player rated 1735. So let's hop into the action. He played a Sicilian, same as in game 1. And then he played this move e6. Now, this is probably the third most common move on move 2 in the Sicilian. Most common is knight c6 and d6, both of which I usually meet with a fairly early bishop b5. Now, this can lead into very tactical positions. So, for example, if you just play the normal open Sicilian moves, Black can play this very tactical idea, bishop b4. This leads to Sicilian counterattack, and it's very difficult to meet. It's very sharp. So I decided to avoid all that, and rather than play d4 immediately, I decided to just develop my pieces and slowly develop and delay d4. So let's go on. And now with my king side safely developed, thought it was safe to play d4 at this point and avoid any kind of sharp calculations he took, and then played queen c7. Now here's where I made my first mistake. So I was looking for a good spot to develop my queenside bishop. I didn't want to put it on g5 because with my pawn on g3 he can simply kick it out and I cannot return to h4. As it will get trapped, and I would simply have to trade it off. So the logical spot to put it was e3, and I played this relatively quickly. Now this happened to be a mistake, which is why it's important to think about tactics even in the opening and not just make normal developing moves. So the correct move here would have been to trade knights. Now if he recaptures with the queen, I have this nasty double attack with the attack e5 with the attack on both the queen and the knight. So he would most likely have to recapture with the pawn, in which case I have this other nasty move, e5. If he takes, I can take back with the rook. He cannot capture because of bishop c6. And if he simply plays a move such as knight d5, I can play a sequence like this and give him an isolated c-pawn. So again, it's pretty important just to remain alert and not just simply play normal developing moves and look for tactics right away. Okay, so now I started to, after my bishop was developed, I wanted to get my queen, and I had trouble deciding between d2 and e2. Eventually I decided my queen belongs on d2, leaving my e2 square available for my queen knight, because I wanted to put my knight back and then aim for c4, getting some kind of Maroczy bind. Now the problem is if I play queen d2 immediately, he can come after the bishop. So as we'll see, I decided to play h3, just prevent that, and that's also can sometimes block other ideas of knight into e5 to g4. And later on, I also had intended to play f4, which may open up this diagonal. So it would create some kind of luft for my king to set an h2, which is eventually what happened. So he plays a rook b8, and now I get in my queen d2. And now he plays knight e5, certainly aiming for the c4 square. Now the g4 square is already blocked by my h-pawn, so I decided to block the c4 square. Now the downside of this is that I'm actually weakening dark squares on the queen side. In fact, one of the things I had to analyze was d5, followed by bishop b4 with this nasty pin. But I thought this should be okay after I can defend this way and then put my bishop on d4 and then move my queen somewhere and eventually my knight. So I was in fact looking at other moves such as a3, So let's go back. So I played b3. I was expecting an immediate b5, in which case I was planning to follow up with just rook c1, moving my knight, and try to get my pawn to c4 anyway. But he just developed, and then I got in f4, and he moved his knight back. Now, interestingly enough, the engine just simply prefers that he return his knight to c6, but from a psychological standpoint, it's difficult to put your knight back where it came from when you just moved it. So I moved it to g6, and now I went through with the plan, knight c to e2, with the goal of following up with c4. And then he moved his other rook, which I saw as a waste. Remember, his rook started out on a8 and moved to b8 and then to c8. And I got in my c4. And I was starting to feel pretty good at this point. I feel like I have a lot more space. I have 3 pawns now on the 4th rank, while he has none on the 5th rank. I was expecting him to just play a normal developing move. For example, rook d8, possibly try to get in b5. But he played this funny move. I'm not quite sure what the idea was. So I have 3 attackers, and he only has 2 defenders. So I took it pretty quickly. And then he followed up with e5. I'm not sure exactly what the point of this. Now, I did consider just simply trading here, but I thought this was helping him to develop. With the knight on e5, b5 has a lot more venom, because it will help to break up these pawns. So instead of that, I simply returned my knight to f3, with the idea being that if he decides to trade, I would take with the knight, and things would trade off, and I would have a very strong position with an open e-file. However, as soon as he took, I realized what the problem was, and that if I were to take back with the knight, he has this nasty move, knight e4, and there's no way to save the g-pawn. Now, interestingly enough, the engine actually prefers this play. They said, the engine just says I should just give up the g-pawn and get some piece activity, bring my rooks in, possibly play queen here, and get my rooks into the center. And the engine thinks this is okay, but I didn't go for that. I just simply took back with a bishop. Of course, now I had to give up the bishop pair. And then he played this move, bishop c5. And again, one of the benefits of playing in early h3 is I now have a hiding spot for my king. Rook e8. So now I started to think about a number of moves. One thing I was definitely considering was knight d3. With the goal of having both knights pointed to e5 and trying to get a knight in there and winning back the bishop pair. But he can just simply return his bishop to d6, and it's very difficult for me to protect this. In the end, I just decided to trade rooks. And now he played. I played knight e4. Now, one of the things I had to analyze, there's several things I had to analyze. So one was knight g3, with the idea being that if I were to recapture, this knight is pinned, and he can gang up on it this way. Another idea that I was also thinking about was bishop f5, which also gives the threat of knight g3, which protects the bishop. Of course, I cannot follow it up by g4, as I'll lose my knight. And it can become very tactical, even if I attack his bishop. I guess in this case he cannot take because his rook's on pre. So let's go back. In the end, he actually played f5, and now here I had another long think. Eventually, I settled on knight d4, the goal that one of these knights should get into e6, which will make very strong, and also will remove the defender of the rook against the knight. again, I really had to consider knight g3. So I cannot take back with the queen because I'll lose my knight. And if I take back with the king, this runs into g5, where he has this nasty threat. Wasn't exactly sure how I was going to defend. I suspect I would trade rooks. This is possible as well. Anyways. What else was I looking at here? I also was looking at bishop d6, just simply aiming down on this on the g3 pawn. Of course, if I now move one of my knights into here, he now has 3 attackers on the g pawn. Okay. So the engine just simply says I can take here. And I was looking at these types of positions. What does the engine say? Oh, it says d6. That's an interesting idea. With the idea being that this is a clearance sacrifice for the d5 square, and then if he takes back here, I can simply play bishop d5, trade off the rooks. That's an interesting idea. So that's not something I considered during the game. Let's go back. So after knight d4, he played a move I wasn't expecting, queen e5. And now I thought the best move is to put one of these knights into e6. And I had a lot of trouble deciding which one. I decided it was better to put the d knight, figuring that this would first of all leave the knight as a defense to the g3 pawn. It would essentially block the queen. So and he played a move that I wasn't quite expecting. I had planned for it. Played bishop f2, which was I was not expecting. Now, when this move came, originally I was planning on playing rook e2, with the notion that if he were to capture my g pawn, we would actually end up trading queens, and I'd be way ahead, of course. However, in this case, now I saw he has a move that I wasn't expecting, and I didn't plan for, queen a1, of course threatening checkmate on the g file. And the engine thinks at this point I should just simply give up an exchange and play this, and I actually have a nice advantage. Despite being down in exchange, I do have 2 pawns, and my knights are placed very well. And I have ideas of just simply pushing my h pawn. But I decided instead just simply to give up the exchange. I took the knight, and I was expecting actually one of these moves to protect his h7 pawn, either h6 or g6. On this move, so I was actually planning to sacrifice here. When I saw this, however, I actually missed rook g8, which is very crushing. It's basically attacks the g pawn. There's no easy defense. So I think the computer thinks we should just simply trade. Let's see. I see. Computer gives this line where black ends up just doing a perpetual. Okay, let's go back. This is another interesting try that I also had to analyze. So I was planning in this case, this is more similar to the game. And I was in fact looking at all these different lines. It's very hard to analyze so many moves in advance. Let's see, if he takes with the queen, I have checkmate. And if he takes with the king, I do have some discovered attacks with the knight. Actually, the engine seems to think I should play queen d3. Anyways, he didn't play, surprisingly, he didn't play either g6 or h6. Again, he went down queen a1, threatening checkmate on the g1 square. So I took the h7 pawn. And interestingly enough, the engine now prefers that I play two moves that I didn't consider. So one excellent try is just queen b1, just simply trading off the queens. So despite the fact I'm down in exchange for two pawns, white is definitely better here, because especially the d pawn is so close to queening, and the knights are really in his territory. That's not a move I considered. And the second move I didn't consider is just simply h4. And he cannot have a checkmate here. I can run out. So this would have been another interesting try. I didn't play either one of those. So I ended up playing knight g6, and after taking, I gave him a double attack. He cannot go to either the he cannot remain on the h file. Otherwise, there's queen h7 checkmate. So he went back to g8 check. And at this point, I honestly thought he would. When I looked at this position from afar, I thought his only try was to return his queen to f6, thereby defending his bishop. In which case, we would just simply trade, and I would be down in exchange. Although I far prefer to be white here because I have two passed pawns for the exchange. So that's what I was expecting. But actually, the other try that I didn't consider was simply going back to g8. And in this case, we get all zeros. So I was planning to take his bishop here, and but I would still far prefer to have white. You know, his rook doesn't have a lot of scope in here, and I was planning to push my h-pawn. However, he does get quite a bit of counterplay. He can get in b5. But he didn't do either one of those things. He went to e7, which was a blunder, and I won pretty quickly. So first, I went knight g6, and there's only one move, king d6, and the game ended at this point, where he resigned because he's in a mating net. So overall, so I won the game. The computer gave me a score of 83. I think he had about 75. So I'm still not actually playing too well. I think if I hope to have any chance of winning the tournament, I need to definitely improve my play, especially during the opening and early middle game. One thing I did like is that I thought my time management was pretty good. I only used up about half my time, and it's important to always be cognizant of the clock, especially this this time control where you only get an hour to make all your moves. So anyway, that was an interesting game. Hope you enjoyed the recap, and we will see you all in the next video.